Hello, and welcome to Getting an Understanding of Revelatory Wisdom with Revelatory author and instructor, Dr. Audrey Aikens. In today's session, we'll give you a taste of how Dr. Audrey Aikens extracts the revelatory wisdom found in God's Word and how she uses this wisdom to build the biblical foundation for her revelatory concepts and definitions, which are often found in her teachings and various expositories. Now here's our revelatory author and instructor, Dr. Audrey Aikens.
Good evening. This is Dr. Audrey Aikens, and I'm coming to you again with another teaching that I'd like to share with you, this time on the subject of Job. I'm sure many of you have heard a lot about the story of Job in your various times of listening to spiritual teaching, but I wanted to bring him to us talking about what happens when God says, "Hath thou considered?" Whenever it is that we find ourselves being accosted or being overwhelmed in our lives and wondering, how could this happen to me when I'm trying to be so upright before God? And this was a story that Job had. Job was a young man that was considered to be perfect before God. The word says that he walked upright before him and that he was God-fearing. And he was so God-fearing that he is said to have eschewed evil. That means he avoided it at all costs. He did everything he could to walk right before God and to make sure that his children walked right too. He hated the idea, he was turned off by the idea of anything evil in the world, or accepting it, or accepting what he felt was evil behavior or behaving unwisely. He was a man that walked what we call wisely circumspect. Walking upright is walking wisely circumspect, meaning being careful how I step, being careful how I behave, wanting to be spiritual minded as I go through life. I want to exercise my choice to live sacrificially before God, seeing that I can please God, that I respect him as a child of God. And this was what Job wanted for his life and for his children's lives. Now, Job wasn't considered to be an Israelite. He lived in a time that was between the establishing of Israel and in the times that they call patriarchal times. They were times where men lived what they knew of God, their own experience of God. A lot of it was things that were passed down and generations. You will find, if you study religions, that a lot of the Muslim religion has a lot of the elements of the Christian religion. It has a lot of elements of the Jewish religion. You know, at the basis of them, they all have their own idea of God. And so Job had his idea of God. And so he lived a life that was supposed to be full of a sense of spiritual integrity. He lived it before men so that his testimony went before him. He was diligent about what it is that he did. And so therefore God blessed him. He blessed him. He prospered him. He not only had 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters, but the word said he was rich in substance. Everything he had, everything he did, it seemed like God had prospered it. He lived well before God. And as a result, he behaved himself wisely in all his ways. But what he didn't know what was going on in heaven. Often we don't know what's going on in heaven. We just live our lives the best we know how down here, but we need to know that a behind the scenes is always going on where we can't see. And so it was that the word tells us that there was a day that the sons of God appeared before him to give an account of themselves. Why would that happen? Because God is sovereign and everything must bow and come subject to God. And the word says that even Satan came among the sons of God. So you need to know that even though Satan is a stripped version of Lucifer, that was cast out of heaven, yet he too would come and present himself before God to give an account of what he did, even though his doings was only going to and fro throughout the earth, seeking whom he might destroy. But yet and still God would ask him, so where you come from? And this particular day he asked him, have you considered Job, my servant Job? He challenged Satan to consider Job's integrity. Now, we have absolutely no idea how often God does us the same way he did Job. We have no idea of that. But yet and still we need to understand God knows what he put in you. He knows what he's given you to be able to withstand anything, because the word lets us know he's not going to ever let it be more than we can bear. And he keeps us in that perfect peace, but he also wants to be glorified in the earth. He also wants us to live our lives as living sacrifices, so that in the living aloud, in the sacrificing, in the going through, in the being cast down but not destroyed, yet and still, he is able to get glory out of that, which men in hearing and seeing say, oh my God, that was God. There are ways that God has to allow us to go through so that his invisible working is seen through our visible living. And so we become his very present help in the earth, as he is a very present help to us. So the Lord says to Satan, have you considered? And I'd like to define that for you, because that is such a revelation if we would just get it. I'm going to try to take my time and define this for you as it appears in the Hebrew. And in the Hebrew, hast thou considered is the two words, leb shroom. Leb shroom. And it appears only in Job. So Job gives us this quick shot of what goes on behind the scenes when God says, hast thou considered? And what it signifies is, have you tramped on? Have you tread upon? Have you tested the heart of? Have you tested the wisdom? Have you tested the intellect? Have you tested the resilient trust? Have you tested the wise-hearted ones that I have in the earth? And you encounter them few and far in between in God. So this doesn't happen often, but it does happen to those God knows he's already prepared in the earth to be able to represent him. Have you considered? The revelatory is in it that it, besides utilizing sudden devastating loss, it points to the fact that in Satan's considering, he comes to heap unthinkable calamity. He heaps adversity. He heaps many afflictions. The word says, many are the afflictions of the righteous. That's because of Satan considering you. The word also tells us that the Lord delivers us from them all. But yet and still we have to realize, yes, but many are the afflictions. He wouldn't have to deliver us from them all if there weren't going to be many of them coming, right? So he heaps unthinkable calamity, adversity, many afflictions. He piles them on. He uses many adversaries to come and intentionally crowd us, to make us feel that our restful spaciousness that salvation is supposed to be has no merit, has no worth. God can't keep the enemy from us. It makes us feel like there's a possibility that evil can triumph over good, but it's not so. We have to learn how to truly trust in God. And there's going to be many times that we find weeping endures for a night. That lets you know there's some stuff that's going to make you weep. There's stuff that'll make you bleed. There's stuff that'll make you go, oh my God, I can't go near another further. And yet and still, God is saying, but I'm here. I got you. So this last one is, this considering is also a revealing how the enemy thinks to wear us out. And what I love about the word is that it confirms itself in so many different scriptures. Now this definition of hast thou considered comes from Daniel the 7th chapter, 25th verse, which lets us know that the spirit of Antichrist, the Antichrist in the earth, he will try to wear out the saints. How? By speaking great words against the Most High. That's still that hast thou considered. That's the tools that he utilizes. That's what he does. There's nothing new under the sun. What he's done before, he's going to do again. What he did to Job, he's going to still do to the saints that are alive and well when the Antichrist is revealed in the earth. This is why we need to learn what it is that enabled Job to choose to yet still trust him. He sifts. Well, that's what Jesus told us through speaking to Peter. It said that Satan has desired to sift you, right? Sift you as wheat. What is that? His considering you. He considered the disciples just like he considered Job, just like he's considering many of us today. So considering also signifies Satan has an ability to overtake, to beset, to easily beset us, to overwhelm, to overturn, to damage, to heap calamity, to try to kill faith, steal peace, or destroy the spiritual mindedness that keeps us in God's perfect peace, waiting on our ordered change to come. That's what he does. But the thing is that we need to learn what Satan's limitations are. Because in all of this, which sounds like a lot, sounds kind of intimidating, sounds like you can lose your mind in the midst of all of that, still there is a limitation to what he can do. Because salvation means I'm already delivered from dire straits and dangerous situations, out of that unto a place of restful spaciousness where the enemy can't touch me. All right? That's the revelatory definition of salvation. So if the enemy can do all of this, isn't that him violating my space? No, he can only violate what God permits him to violate. So God has a border around us. He says he will keep in perfect peace those who keep their mind stayed on him. You keep your focus, God said, and I'll keep your peace. But the enemy, he says, well, if you just touch everything he's got, he'll curse you to your face. He'll curse you and leave that integrity behind. And the Lord said, well, I'll tell you what, all that he has, you can have. It's all in your hands, but don't touch his life. Right? What's that? That's a parameter. Those are boundaries that God sets around us so that the enemy can't just do whatever he wants. Whatever he's got that he's going to bring on us, it's got to do what? Go through God to get to us. And when will we find that out? When will we find out the truth of that? In the afterwards. It's always in the afterwards of how our having gone through and found out that God's word is true. So we learn that as we go through the scriptures, because there's 42 scriptures that you have, 42 chapters in which Job goes through, that you would have to go through, and I got to squeeze that all into a few minutes that we have here. But as we progress, we learn that he lost everything, and yet and still he chose, I'm going to trust him anyway. The word said in all that he went through, when Job lost everything, he simply tore his clothes, sprinkled dust on his head, and fell down and worshiped God. See, when things happen that you have no answers for, the thing to do is not to run from God, but to run to God. With the fact that I don't have an understanding, but I have a knowing of you. And I choose to trust you. You see, you have to exit. You have a power of choice that we talked about the last time we did a podcast. We talked about the power of choice. We have a power of choice, but you're either going to use it, exercise it, or you lose it. You lose it because you laid it down, not because the enemy can take it away from you. But if you exercise that power of choice that says, but I will trust him. I exercise it. I put that there. Even though I can't hear it, feel it, sense it, whatever. By faith, I say, I will choose to trust in him. And God does the rest. That's all he's waiting for. Because he's standing there all the time. The word says, when I behave myself wisely in all my ways, God is with me. Where is he? Overshadowing me. I can't see him. That's because he's invisible. But he's very presently working in our lives. Overshadowing, keeping, hedging us in, protecting us, busily upholding us so that even when we fall, our fall is not utter. It's not complete. You never hit the bottom. You know how I don't know if you ever had those dreams. I used to have dreams when I was young of falling. But you never hit the bottom. But you find yourself jumping in the bed because you feel like you're falling. You know, they have all kind of explanations for it. But what I'm saying to you is you never hit the bottom. They say if you do hit the bottom in those things that you really did die. Who knows what it is? What I'm saying to you is God will let us go through things. But he'll keep it from taking us to the place that he has not permitted. You can touch everything he has. Don't take his life. You can touch his body. He went through that, didn't he? Before he could get over having lost his children and lost all his substance, the next thing we know, God asked Satan again, have you considered my servant Job? In other words, what did you do? Because you provoked me to destroy him without a cause, but he still retained his integrity. Job said, let me add it again, but this time let me take his life. He said, well, you can't have his life. You can touch his body, but you can't touch his life. He went back and he struck him with boils. The boils were so terrible and the calamity was such a thing that his wife, who couldn't take it anymore because she didn't have that relationship with God that Job did, said, why don't you curse him and die? Job said, you speak as a foolish woman. Shall I? I came naked in this world and naked I'm going to go out. God gave and God took away, and yet I will still trust him. But Satan's considering Job wasn't over yet. Because even then, even though the boils didn't do it, he still wasn't finished. The wife's words of rejection didn't do it, and despising him didn't do it, but he wasn't finished, because the power of idle words that are used in your life, the power of people speaking opinions to you and assumptions to you, that can mess you up bad enough that you forget about everything. They can shake your very foundation. They can shake your faith in God. People can make you feel unworthy. They can make you feel like that, like Job's friends did. They came and for a week they sat and looked at him and said nothing but called themselves comforting him by staring at him for a week. But how many know that sometimes people can look at you and say a lot and you haven't heard anything, but the silent words scream at you. They tear at your spirit. That's what happened to Job. But that's a part of Satan or Satan's considering us. He will use the power of idle words. You have got to learn to be like Job. Job listened to that stuff for 13 chapters. It got so bad between what his wife was saying and his 3 friends were saying that he opened up his mouth and he cursed the very day that God had even allowed him to be born. But God knows that there's sometimes when our heart is going to be weak. He knows there's sometimes when your heart will fail you. He knows there's sometimes when we get so overwhelmed we start talking crazy. I've done a lot of it myself. But we've got to learn to trust God anyway. Press on into him. Press through that valley and shadow of death. And especially when you're hearing, but you don't hear a good part. You don't hear the right part. You don't hear. Job needed he needed to hear from God. He needed to know, how do I fix this? He needed to know, how do I get out of this pit that I'm in? I need to know how to please God. My sacrifices haven't done it. What more can I do? And guess what? He wasn't hearing it in the opinions of people. You'll never hear how to please God by man's opinion. You'll never hear how to please God by man's traditions, the traditions of men. You'll never know how to please God by applying the letter of the word rather than the spirit of the word. You need to learn how to tap into his spirit. Need to learn how to hear God for yourself. And that is exactly what Job decided to do. He said, you know what? Though he slay me. In Job 13:15, 13th chapter, the 15th verse, he said, yet though he slay me. Because the enemy will make it seem like it's God. He'll blame it all on God. His words will make it seem like it's either you or God. And God can't be wrong, so it has to be you out of order. He said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And while I'm trusting him, I need you to know I'll maintain my own way before God. You have to learn. Learn that everybody's opinion can't be what takes you into that holy of holies. Everybody's opinion doesn't have the key to the kingdom that you need to press into that place to hear God for yourself. Job realized that that was the one thing missing. Just like when we talked the last time I did the cast with you, and we talked about Elizabeth, how Elizabeth just needed to know why. Mary, the mother of Jesus, that when she was told that she was supposed to have a baby named Jesus that would become her Lord, she needed to know how. We need a word, and that word that we need can't come from man. You need to get your word from God. When you press into that place and you decide, I don't care, y'all are crazy. I can't take y'all anymore. What y'all saying is not doing anything for me. What y'all saying is driving me from God rather than pulling me into him. I'm going to seek him for myself. That is what we need to do. Because the idle words that men spew at us, the idle words that men spew at us, they can only barb. They only snag your flesh. They rip at you. They tear at your heart. That's what idle words do. They're barbed hooks that the enemy uses in considering us. That's why he likes to have people come and call you up and say, what's going on? You know, and try to get all into that. If they're not leading you to a place where you saying, trust God, God's got this, I know it's hard, I know it's rough, but God's got, press on into God, then you don't need to hear that. And that's what Job decided to do. You know what? I'm going to God for myself if it kills me. Let me question him. Let me reason with him. Because what y'all are saying don't make no sense. And that's exactly what he did. He pressed into God, yet will I trust him. It is Ak Yashal. That means I'll wait patiently for him with hope. Patiently with hope. It may cause me pain. That's the key to this. Yet will I trust him. Ak Yashal means it may cause me more pain. As I trust him, still I choose to wait. Still I choose to be stayed. Still I choose to focus. Because if I focus, the word says, he will keep me in perfect peace. What I'm missing in the din and the noise and all the confusion around me is the peace that passes all understanding. There's no understanding the calamity that the enemy can bring us to. There's no understanding the death reports that he brings. There's no understanding the intimidation and the adversity and the affliction other than to say it's just his considering us. But what's our answer? Though he slay me, not the enemy, though he makes it seem like God is slaying me, yet I'll trust him. Why does he want to make it seem like God is doing it? So we'll run from God, not to God. So we'll curse God, not trust God. So we'll care more about things that we have and people that we thought would be with us than we will about God, loving God more than all that, so that we can be counted worthy, so that he can uphold us, so that he can direct us on, so that he can restore us. When? Afterwards. The afterwards is where we see that what God promised, despite the process, will always have a performance in our life. But you got to exercise that power of choice. that says, I don't care what's going on. I don't care what I don't feel. I don't care what I don't know. I don't care what I don't understand. I don't care what I can't articulate. This one thing I choose. And this is the needful thing that can't be taken away from us. I will trust in the Lord. And I'll make my own way. Maintain my own course. Find my own way in before Him. And trust Him. And watch Him move on my behalf. And that's what happened with Job. In the end, in the 42nd chapter of Job, after Job had been caught up in the whirlwind and God showed him who he was, he said, I heard about you with the hearing of my ear, but now I see you with my spiritual eye. We hear a lot out there, a lot. Half of what you hear you can't believe anymore. He said, but if I can just see you, he said, now I see you with my eye. And I hate how I've been. And God restored him. Restored him to twice what it was that he was before. And he was the richest man in the earth then. God restored him. He said, but before I do, I need you to do one thing. I need you to pray for your 3 friends that told you everything that was wrong about me. I didn't send them. When they call themselves prophesying, that's my term, prophesying. Everything that comes to you that says God said, God didn't say it. He proved that through Jeremiah, did he not? He told Jeremiah, go tell them I didn't send them. I didn't say that. I didn't send them. I didn't send anybody to say that they would be delivered in 3 years. What part of captivity for 75 years don't you understand? Trust God. Seek Him for yourself. Seek to hear a word. When you're confused, don't go to men trying to figure it out. Get in that quiet place. Seek the Lord for yourself. It pleases Him to reveal Himself to you. And He always reveals Himself in the midst of trust. God bless you. Grow in grace and go in peace and watch God in your lives be glorified. Greetings, this is Dr. Audrey Aikens again. For those of you who stuck with me to the end of that little short teaching, I would like to give you a bonus. I would like to go back over these 6 definitions that I had that are revelatory concepts and just read them into your hearing because they're good information for you. The first one is the term afterwards, where you notice that I said that we always see the performance in the afterwards. There's the promise that God gives, or the visions that God gives, or the words that God gives. There's the process we must go through, the things we must endure, but it always leads to there shall be a performance. When is the performance? It's always in the afterwards, on the other side of going through. So afterwards. Afterwards signifies in time seen, or experienced later. It signifies in a next or subsequent time frame. As a revelatory scriptural concept, it always proves full of the very present parts that God appoints to be seen. The afterwards is full of those promised manifestations of ordered change performing. That which God orders, He provides for. But it's not always seen in the process you go through. It's seen in the afterwards when performance has occurred. Okay, so 16 times in Job, the word afterwards appears, either as afterwards or after. And it's all the Hebrew word akar, A-C-H-A-R, akar. And that signifies a promised coming expected was seen as so. A promised coming expected was seen as so. When? After. in the afterwards, in the hinder part, in the enduring through, on the backside, in the behind process. It was changed to come, appointed to reveal all that's been hoped or believed for. God also causes a car to outlive, so be seen, to speak and not to lie. Just like his visions in Habakkuk says, his vision shall speak and not lie. That's the akar, when? In the afterwards. So he causes the akar, the afterwards, to outlive process so as to be seen, to speak and not lie, following, or as his follow through. It also points to resilient degrees of time. Resilient degrees of time refers to the fact that God's time is not our time. When he says this is going to happen shortly, we tend to look at a calendar to determine what shortly is. Surely by now it should have happened. But in God, shortly may take months. Shortly may take years. Abraham even found out shortly could take 20 years. You don't know because your time is not God's concept of time. But he gives us enough grace to get through whatever that span is to get to the other side to see it didn't lie, but it spoke. Hath thou considered? I think I did a little bit of that, but that word is leb shwum, and it reveals a thinking to wear us out. It's a speaking great words against the Most High. It's the enemy working to make us feel disappointed in God. Why? Because he didn't prevent our being sick. He didn't prevent our being sifted. He didn't prevent our being laid siege to. He didn't prevent a weapon from forming against us. But what he does prevent is that weapon from what? Prospering against us. Doesn't mean it's not going to form. It doesn't mean the enemy's not going to huff and puff and bluff that he's going to blow your house down. Doesn't mean that you won't shake. Doesn't mean that you won't feel the earthquake. But what it does mean is on the other side, in the afterwards, you're going to look back and say, if it had not been for the Lord, how would I have gotten through? So, this considering, hast thou considered? Leb Shroom also talks about the fact that Satan uses messengers. He has messengers that he sends, that he assigns to rack us with pain, to buffet us, to harass us, to, listen, exploit weaknesses and issues that we ought to have deposed, that we ought to have unseated. But when we don't cast down vain imaginations, when we don't bring our thoughts, our wild, idle thoughts into captivity to the Word of God, the enemy uses those. He exploits them. He considers us in doing that. If we haven't deposed them, if we haven't unseated them, he then magnifies them. And they become issues that not just we have, but that have us. That is what Leb Shwum is about. Our next word to consider is, though he slay me. Though he slay me is the Hebrew words hen katal. Hen katal. It expresses Job's wise willing-heartedness that knows to run into God for safety. Run into him for refuge. Run into him for direction, not from him. Run in choosing to turn and just trust him, even if it appears doing so could quite literally kill me. If the Lord is saying, trust me, and even in me hearing that, if he says, have this particular operation, and you're saying, if I have it, it's going to kill me. And yet, until you're hearing God say, have it, I've got you. Then you've got to trust that more than you trust the process that you've got to go through to get to the other side of what God has promised will be afterwards. You have it, I got you, it's going to happen. Though he slay me. So it's it appears that the hen speaks to the spiritual cost. Though he slay me, the hen katal. Hen is the spiritual cost. It's the risk in being spiritual minded. You see, being spiritual minded leads to life and peace, the word says. Being carnal minded leads to death. But the enemy tries to turn that around and make it seem if I'm spiritual minded, I'm in denial. If I'm spiritual minded, I'm not doing what I need to do to get relief. I need to do to be delivered. The thing is, if I'm in salvation, I'm already delivered. I just got to get it out of my mind and out of my heart and through my mouth to speak and call those things that be not as though they were, because God has declared they already are. And he's not a man that he should lie. So, hen katal. It also means that we have to choose that as the one thing needful to do continually, despite real-time threatening possibilities, despite our fear of experiencing death, because that death that we will experience is more temporal than it is physical. We can't go anywhere before our time. I shall live and not die, so that I can declare the works of the Lord. So if I'm yielded to my purpose, death can't have any early claim on me, right? So what's worse is when the enemy succeeds in making us feel that it's God that has carelessly multiplied our suffering. That's what hen katal is. It makes you feel like God did this, though he slay me. God is the one that did this. He exacerbated my pain. He took away my family. He took away my relationship. He took away my job. No, he didn't. And if he did, that's another thing we have to understand. If God allows something to be taken from me, if he causes me to let it go or empty my hand of it, it's because he has something better, something greater, something dearer, something he knows is better for me than what I let go. That's why we shouldn't run to the enemy's camp wanting back what the enemy took from me. I don't want it back. If God allowed it to be taken, why would I want it back? God has the better. Yet will I trust him. Our next concept is ak yashal. It means I'll wait patiently with hope. It may cause me more pain. It may seem like it's foolish, but I choose to wait. I choose to be stayed. I choose to be focused. I choose to be stable. Stable in my thinking. That's what yet will I trust him. It means I choose to be spiritual minded. I choose to behave wisely. I choose not to be double-minded in all my ways and unstable. I will ak yashal. I've counted in my mind. I've counted the cost. I've cast it in my mind, and now I'm surely, confidently, intentionally, and consequentially choosing to yet trust him. Finally, we come to I will maintain my own ways before him. That I will maintain is expressed by one word in Hebrew, yakat. Yakat. I'll do what I gotta do to get it right. I'll do what I've got to do before God to get it right. I'll adjust my own way. I will do what becometh me. I can't live it for you. I can't live my salvation for you. I have to live it in front of you. Sometimes we have to live it despite people. The only way to get it right is I got to do it for me. I got to do it as it becometh me. Trying to live according to somebody else's standards when it's not what God is requiring of you can mess you up. Because people are thinking that they can maintain your way before God. Their suppositions and assumptions can't maintain anything for you before God. Matter of fact, the enemy, or Job's three friends, made him feel like they were the physicians with no power to heal. Mm-hmm. They were purveyors of lies. They came planting lies into his spirit. And you know what? When you love truth, you can tell when somebody's trying to feed you lies. There's something that goes off in your spirit that doesn't bear witness of what's being said. And that's what happened to Job, and that's why he said, I'll maintain my ways before the Lord. It also means I'll go to God seeking. for that one thing needful. I'll go to God exercising my power of choice. I'll go to God giving him my trust, retaining my integrity, because integrity is the key to pressing in. Integrity is the key to pressing in, to be known, to know as I am known. The only way to know myself as God knows me is I got to press into him. When you want to know the purpose of a thing, you go to the maker of that thing. Other people's opinion doesn't tell you. Even when we go and we want to go to a movie or something and we read the reviews, just because that person thought that movie stunk doesn't mean you will think so, because they may be looking for something entirely different from what you are. They may be looking for murder and mayhem. They may be looking for sex and cussing. They may be looking for all kinds of things, and you're not. And so you can't go by that. You've got to maintain your way before him for yourself. Our last one is mine own ways before him. Mine own ways, 3 words expressed by one, direct. My own ways is my mode, my actions, my course in life, my ordered way, my ordered steps. That's what it pertains to. My own ways before him. The way in which he has set before me to go, I must needs go through. Before him is paneum. Paneum means his face, his presence. I will maintain my own ways in his presence. Before him is in his presence. What's that mean? Got to get there. You got to get into his face. You got to get into his presence. You got to learn, whether it takes going into your closet, whether it takes getting on your knees, whether it takes throwing your hands up before God, whatever it takes for you, find that. If it takes worship music, play your worship music. Get by yourself. If it takes doing your Indian dance, or doing your praise dance, or waving your hands before the Lord, whatever it is, do what it takes to get yourself in the presence of the Lord. And when we do, God says, that's behaving wisely. And when we behave ourselves wisely, the Word tells us God is with us. I don't have to go find him. I don't have to go seek him. He was there all the time anyway. He in the have you considered that it didn't mean that he left Job. He was there all the time. He just allowed Job to express what was in his heart all the time. See, the Word says God's eyes go to and fro throughout the earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect toward him. Job's faith showed his heart perfect towards him. But God's looking for opportunity. So what you're going through, it may seem rough. It may seem hellish. It may seem like God has rejected you. But know that through it all, God's got you. Learn to look to him for yourself. Learn to press into him and watch him reveal himself to you. God bless you. Go in grace and grow in peace.
We hope you enjoyed this session, for as we are reminded in Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and in all your getting, get an understanding. For more information or to explore other resources available from Dr. Audrey Aikens, including podcasts, books, and more, log on to the website at www.draikensministries.com or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and SoundCloud. Until next time, be encouraged to continue to pursue the revelatory wisdom found in God's Word. This segment is a product of Whole Man Life Trainers LLC and is produced by Creative Impact LLC with all rights reserved.